Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We've got a phenomenal panel today, and I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves and give a little bit of background. So, Bobby, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about Bitstamp, and then we're going to circle back and talk about your M&A with Robinhood and your M&A across the industry.
My name is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. No, it's not. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's the wrong stage, Bobby.
He's over there. Bobby Zagotta. I'm Bitstamp USA CEO and also Chief Commercial Officer for the company globally. I've been with Bitstamp 3 years. Prior to this, I was with Kraken, another exchange, as Chief Commercial Officer. Before that, I was at CME Group, so I have some traditional financial services in my background, too. 3 things to know about Bitstamp. We're the longest-running crypto exchange, founded in 2011, so we have some track record there. Second thing is we were the first to ever get a license. So the founders really leaned into being the most regulated and compliant exchange because they envisioned a time like today when more institutions would get involved. And then the third thing to know is, our claim to fame is around product and the user experience.
Jane, please introduce yourself, and as we know, Cleary Gottlieb is world-renowned for their M&A and restructuring. Tell us a little bit about what you do in the firm, and then we're going to circle back and talk a little bit about our favorite subject, Genesis.
Thank you. So my name is Jane VanLare. I'm a partner at Cleary Gottlieb. I do restructuring and have spent the last, I would say, year and a half, 2 years doing quite a bit of restructuring in the crypto space. I do both in court and out of court, all sorts of restructuring.
And definitely, not least, but definitely last, Kevin Dede with H.C. Wainwright. Kevin, you get the unique perspective of seeing M&A across all industries. Give us a little bit of a background on you, what you do. And you have a unique perspective on the Bitcoin industry, which I'll leave for you to surprise everyone with.
Thanks very much, Patty and Bobby and Jane, for having me share the stage with you. Pleasure and an honor. And everyone in the audience, like Bobby said, JFK is over in the other, RFK, sorry, is in the other stage. Right.
The audience has tripled.
We're drawing them in. I told you. Jane had doubts, but I said, if we build it, Jane, they will come. This is for the video record. My name's Kevin Dede, and I work for H.C. Wainwright, as Petty mentioned, and there are many fans. That's Hive out there. I started covering, was the first analyst to cover institutional directed research on any company in crypto. The first one was Riot, at the time was Riot Blockchain in early 2018. And have, I guess for 3 years subsequent to that, covered Bitfarms and Marathon and BitDigital, and I've covered 30 other companies now in the crypto space. What's really interesting, I think, about my experience is just having been there so long is just see how dynamic it's been. And my firm deserves a lot of credit for having built the investor side of this and the publicly facing side of it. Riot blockchain was public, but I don't know if I'll offend anyone out there, but almost went bankrupt in 2019, and my banker was able to salvage that company by finding a bank to clear the stock. No one in the United States would touch it because it was deemed to be like cannabis. But my banker did that and found some investors, saved the company, went on to raise, I don't know, maybe $1 or $2 billion for Riot and another 2 or 3 for Marathon and almost $1 billion for Bitfarms, and been very, very active in the space.
And Kevin, just so you know, we should be getting more people because I have someone standing out there explaining that you're reducing everybody's rating from buy to, hold or sell if they don't come in here. So just so you know, that's why we're getting more people. And
Good to know. Good to know that we're throwing out ultimatums.
Absolutely. I'm not above bribes. No, I'm kidding. My name is Patty Trompeter. I am the CEO of Spear 3D. My background in M&A is I worked for GE Capital for over 20 years, doing all of their M&A internationally, and then I did their corporate turnarounds in-house at Capital, and then I went up and worked for a gentleman who ran GE at the time, Jack Welch, and I did we're going to call them corporate turnarounds. I was also known as his henchwoman, which, proceeds me, whatever. In any event, Bobby, we all want to know. Tell us what led to Robinhood. Tell us what you can. I know it's an active transaction. And talk about M&A and how do you find the right partner and what led you to this?
Yeah, as it's an active transaction, I really can't comment in any detail other than to say we're really excited about the possibilities. But I can talk more generally about M&A, and in past lives did a lot of M&A. And I think there's many dimensions of the crypto space right now that are ripe for some additional consolidation. And in the mining space in particular, as scale becomes more and more important. So I think that we'll see really in 2025 some pretty significant changes from a consolidation standpoint.
And why 2025? Why not 2026? Why not next week?
First of all, take it with a grain of salt. I am not authorized to provide investment advice, but my personal view is that in second half of this year, and in fourth quarter in particular, because of a confluence of a lot of macro factors, the market's going to be very, very active, and we'll get a lot of price action and price appreciation. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's my belief. And then I think going into 2025, that will create both confidence and money for companies to invest more inorganically, at that point. So that's my hypothesis, but again, take it with a grain of salt.
Thank you. And Jane, we all want to know about Genesis and the restructuring. What can you tell us, lessons learned about that? And as we see companies come out and streamline their operations and come out of restructuring, we often see companies dispose of assets. If folks are out looking at buying these distressed assets, what should we be looking out for?
So one of the things that I think we've learned about crypto restructurings is that crypto creditors, investors, they don't want their money back. They want their crypto back. And that has been really a key point in all of the large restructurings that we've seen over the last 2 years. And Genesis was no exception. But one of the things we did, which was really unprecedented, is that from day one we said we would do all that we could to give people their crypto back. And it turns out, lots of novel issues that have come about with crypto restructurings. The bankruptcy system, obviously well established, has been around for a long time, not quite well equipped with all of the novel issues that have come, which has been really exciting to try to grapple. But we had an issue where what we saw during the course of the Genesis bankruptcy is an incredible upsurge in prices for digital assets. So we had Bitcoin, for example, more than tripled in value between the time that the bankruptcy was commenced and by the time that we were ready to emerge in 2024. The bankruptcy code, again, for years and years has provided and is generally understood that claims are frozen as of the time that the bankruptcy is filed in U.S. dollars. Well, it turns out when you combine that with the reality of the crypto space and the volatility of the market, and again the guiding principle which I mentioned in the beginning, which is that crypto creditors want their crypto back, they don't want dollars, led to a really interesting challenge. And we actually had a very contentious battle over this issue and were able to ultimately be successful and give, or will hopefully soon be giving people in-kind recoveries, which was really fascinating and satisfying because, again, we thought that was really the right thing to do given what creditors who who led to Genesis wanted.
So, Jane, was that in kind in dollar terms or in kind in absolute crypto balance?
That's a great question, and that's exactly the key question. No, in kind, not in U.S. dollar terms.
Fine. So Spear 3D is an asset-light mining company, and what we've come to realize over the last year is we need to control our cost of power. We have been very public about finding a merger partner that has infrastructure. Kevin, what I'm seeing out there is a giant smash and grab for data centers. And I think there's a lot of competition between miners who want data centers and, of course, HPC. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing across, the data center landscape.
Absolutely right, Patty. Seeing huge demand, right, for power. In Bitcoin mining, it's compute, capital, right? And we're here to talk about capital too, and capacity. Capacity being access to megawatts. So with the activity in the hyperscalers, I think sort of ran under the radar for the Bitcoin mining community until the CoreWeave Core Scientific deal, which I think changed the complexion of the industry from a Bitcoiner's perspective. And the upshot of that, I think, is that more Bitcoin miners feel that they might have a shot in pursuing that as part of their business plan. And there's an argument to be made both ways, right? It's not the same type of data center, that's for sure. But that doesn't mean the skills that you need to build or run one can't be learned. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, I guess really 2018 is when we first saw the real first industrial Bitcoin mine in the US. At least I did publicly. There might have been others. I mean, Foundry may have been out there, but they certainly weren't nearly as significant as they are now. In the meantime, there's a concern that Bitcoin miners might not be able to execute on the expansion plans that they've laid out and have crafted carefully on social media to engender the excitement of their constituents. But I think a lot of that might be a little overdone. And the reason for that is mostly because any particular site might not be able to support HPC. Like HPC has many more critical aspects to running it than a Bitcoin mine does. One is water for cooling, access to fiber, and consistent power. And the beauty in Bitcoin mining is that you can oscillate the machines on and off depending on power prices or whether or not there's power even available. So I think in general we'll see like the huge sites that Riot's building in Corsicana. I think we're going to see a lot fewer of those. But there is this vertical, I should say, a corridor. It's a corridor stretching from western Texas all the way up to Minnesota, where there are a zillion wind farms. And the issue with those wind farms is that there isn't a way to connect them easily to places where power is demanded. And as a result, you have a high level of stagnant power, and I think that will be there and available for Bitcoin miners. Other smaller sites, I think, will be available too. And for fear of hogging the stage, I'm going to give it back to Patty. Sorry.
Thanks, Kevin. In a couple minutes, I'm going to go around and ask you guys what you think some of the biggest challenges in M&A are. Doesn't have to be Bitcoin mining. I'll kick it off to give you guys a couple of minutes to think about it. One of the things that I'm seeing is there's a challenge in valuations. And how do you value a company that is, for example, in the process of building a data center, but it's not funded, but they have the land and they have the containers and the transformers, but they haven't quite, got it up and operational. So do you value that? Do you ascribe any value in the valuation? And I find, or what I'm finding, is that valuation is one of the biggest arguments that you get into, because we all think our company's worth more than it is, and that's not always necessarily true, except in my case, of course, my company's worth more than I think it is, just so in case there's any bankers out there listening or any potential M&A targets. I'm worth twice what I think it is. So let me go, Kevin, I'm going to start with you, since I always pick on Bobby. What do you think, what are some observations, or what do you think some challenges or observations you have on the M&A landscape?
I agree with Bobby 100%. I think this industry is ripe for consolidation, and he's absolutely right on the scale perspective for so many different reasons. And I think probably the biggest thing holding things back at this point are, I guess, this vanity perspective that some of these boards have, and might be able to make an argument about that between Riot and Bitfarms. But the other side of it is that there are some companies that are desperate, I think, to match the growth plans they've laid out, and we can talk about CleanSpark and also Riot. But I think the pushback, to your point, Patty, is the valuation. Some companies are willing to pay; it's not an issue. But the thing I think that's difficult to look at carefully are the prospects. Many of the Bitcoin miners are looking for an avenue to expand their operations, and therefore they're hoping that their targets have access again to interconnects or substations that they know they can build on with latest technology and make sure that their equipment doesn't go obsolete immediately. But I think that's kind of the hang-up, is how do you get your arms around that? When you look at some of these recent deals, they price out well over millions of dollars per megawatt. And then boils down to a build-buy decision, right? Because there are people out there that think they can build for $250,000 per megawatt. So you're right, Patty. It's the argument. It's arm wrestling.
I'm always up for a good arm wrestle. Jane, what do you think?
So I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle, which is, I think, one of the challenges that I've seen is the regulatory overlay. It's a young industry and it's a fast-growing industry, and I think the regulatory structure has not quite caught up, and so that creates uncertainty, and that sometimes creates timing issues, which can be a real challenge in an M&A transaction. But I think one of the silver lining to the wave of restructurings that we've seen is that I think it's really pressure tested a lot of the structures, the legal structures around how these companies operate, and I think that it has resulted in the strengthening of a lot of the kind of contractual arrangements and structures, and so I think that the industry as a whole will come out stronger. And while I think that there's still quite a bit of uncertainty that remains, I think we'll get there. But it's really exciting to be in the world.
Yeah, I totally agree with you the regulatory issues. And I'd just like to state, in case they're listening, that we here at Spear 3D love the SEC, and we think they're great, and just wanted to say that in case they're listening. And please approve my shelf quickly. Bobby, what about you? Tell us what your observations are, your challenges, what you think in the M&A world.
Well, I definitely agree with Kevin and Jane. The other challenge I think that's pretty unique to this space is it's a cyclical marketplace, and at least it still is. It may not be this cyclical forever, but it is now, and that can both obscure fundamentals when it's an upcycle, and it can obscure values and strengths when it's a down cycle. It makes it, I think, very tricky to sustain an inorganic growth strategy, whether it's tactical or more strategic. So that's something I think we're going to live with for a while, but I think that's fairly unique to the space.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because I heard someone earlier say, everybody was waiting to do M&A until after the halving, and now we see things like, CleanSpark and Grid and the Gordon Gekko Riot Bitfarms transaction that's going on. So it'll be interesting to see. So we're getting close here to wrapping up in the last 5 minutes. So I'm going to ask you guys to think about your predictions for M&A in the rest of the year and 2025 and beyond. What you think is going to happen to the Bitcoin landscape and to, or the mining landscape, and to, Kevin, I know you're going to talk about HPC because you cannot resist HPC. I asked Kevin, hey, how's it going? And he goes, HPC. I'm like, yeah, all right. I just want to know if you want to grab a coffee or something, but all right. In any event, give us your predictions. I'm going to start with Jane. Your predictions for 2024 and 2025 M&A, what are we going to see? Restructuring, what are we going to see? What's changing? What's coming?
So I think we're going to see fewer restructurings and more M&A, which is I think, a good thing. And we on the restructuring end will just work hard to make sure that there are fewer restructurings in 2025.
Fabulous. Okay, who do I pick on next? I'm going to pick on you, Bobby. What do you think?
As I mentioned, I think there's going to be lots of conversations in second half. That could potentially be M&A-oriented conversations or investment conversations. But I think in 2025, we'll see consolidation at several levels. And if we just take the regulatory, dimension for a moment, in the U.S., Bitstamp operates 43 licenses in the U.S. alone. And there's a lot of investment in infrastructure and reporting and relationship management, that goes along with it. But all of my competitors have all that same infrastructure. There's just too many reasons to realize some economies of scale. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I think a lot of consolidation in 2025.
Fantastic. And Kevin?
I think I'm a little bit more, term it aggressive than Bobby's perspective. I think, we've just seen Grid and Block get done in the past couple of weeks. Cover Wonderfy, they rolled up a half dozen different companies in Canada on the exchange side. I think things will actually accelerate. I think that with a hash price, specifically the Bitcoin miners, hash price at 5 cents makes it really difficult to fight the fight. And to Bobby's point earlier, too, in having that scale, you've got a little bit more ability to deal with the folks at Bitmain or MicroBT in securing machines, or you can tackle it sort of the way that Core did with Block and Epic and build your own, or Marathon did with Auradine. I mean, that's a lot of where the mining profits have gone, to the machine manufacturers. To drive those profits, scale will help you develop more vertical integration, and I think more at at an institutional level, I think more and more miners are realizing that, and also, I guess to the Wonderfy point, I think companies are also realizing to deal with regulatory issues. It helps to be able to afford people like Jane to help you. So I honestly think it's going to really ramp up, and I actually think people have been talking well in advance of the halving because they understood what could happen to hash price. The new generation machines could actually pressure it further. So I guess my view would be to say that I think there'll be further accelerated. There are deals that have been happening, I think, that are well out of the limelight, like the Klungsenden Cathedral deal. Also other little smaller ones that don't even hit mainstream media. So I think it's going to see accelerate.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's the only way forward. Okay, with 2 minutes left, we're going to switch from M&A to talk about where does Bitcoin end, at what price at the end of the year. Kevin, take a guess.
Boy, you're holding my feet to the fire.
100%.
So listen, okay, granted, I was at this conference 4 years ago, and it was the crowd there was more Occupy Wall Street than Listen to Wall Street. And so I would caution everyone who hears me on this. I've got to offer just a tad bit of integrity, and I can't really go against the numbers that I use in the forecasts that we build, which are very, very conservative. So let me round it out from a hash price perspective. We're sub 5 cents. Sub 5 cents. That's a combination of network and Bitcoin price.
Oh, come on. I just wanted a price for Bitcoin. I don't even know what you said half the time.
All right.
Forget it. No, I'm going to go to the lawyer.
Thank you.
Because God knows
I'm
we always
sweating
get,
over here, Patty. I'm sweating.
God knows we always
The
get
lights are
straight
bright. The
answers
lights
from
are
the
bright.
lawyers. Jane?
This is not my line of work, but sure, 75.
Bobby, save us.
131,250.
I'm going to say a bazillion. Thanks, everybody, for your time, and we appreciate that you didn't get up when you realized this wasn't the RFK talk. So thanks again.
Thanks, Patty.
Thank you.